In this week's video, I'm going to be detailing exactly how much it costs to live alone in Toronto. For those of you who are new to this channel, less than 6 months ago, I actually lived in Calgary, and when I moved back to Toronto, I had people telling me that it was probably the biggest financial mistake in my entire life. Well, surprisingly and contrary to what everyone believed, the biggest difference I find between Toronto and Calgary, I find really boils down to when you actually want to buy a place. That's when Calgary kicks Toronto's butt. Otherwise, all things else equal, what changed in my monthly expense was my rent that went from $1,350 in Calgary to $1,750 in Toronto, making it about $400 more to live here before going into the granular items. I have lived in Toronto for well over 7 years, and I have seen such a range of cost of living, as I know people can make sacrifices in other areas in their life to compensate for their housing expenses, such as living with roommates or even living with their parents for the time being. I wanted to make this video on the narrative that you're a young professional that wants to move to Toronto from another different Canadian city/province. What would your cost of living alone may look like on average? Before we dive into the video, give this video a good old smash because rent is expensive, and it doesn't help when I keep seeing news articles of inflation going up to the moon. And now with that said, let's begin the video. According to the National Rent Report for last month, the average one-bedroom apartment in Toronto reached a whopping $2,040 a month. When I tell you that number, it probably gives you shivers because I know it certainly does for me. And I'll include some photos or images that right here that you can see of what that would look like. But generally speaking, from my experience, you can get a pretty nice one-bedroom apartment if you're willing to spend that amount. And the crazy part of this is that over the last couple years, mostly due to the illness, there's actually been a few Toronto neighborhoods that have seen rent prices drop by nearly 40% back in March 2021. I've even heard stories of some people who were able to negotiate their existing contracts down to meet the lowered rental rates at the time. The scary part of this all is that despite the numbers dropping drastically, it also jumped as fast as it also went down. It was suggested by one source that Toronto rent prices are expected to shoot up another 11% in 2022. Pretty difficult to predict what will actually happen to the rental markets for the upcoming years, just because things are rapidly changing. But I would say $2,000 would be a good number to budget going in if you're planning to live alone in downtown Toronto. All right, we now have established that it's going to cost you an arm and a leg for rent. Now let's move on to the transportation costs in Toronto. Before things went on lockdown and you actually had to travel downtown to keep your job, a lot of people in Toronto took our public transportation, the TTC, that would cost $156 monthly, and if you're intending to take a one-way route, that would cost you $3.25. You see, back in the day, you used to be able to buy one-way routes via TTC tokens, like something that you get from an arcade, but recently they replaced tokens for this card called Presto. And what Presto is just now think of that as your new Chuck E. Cheese card to get into the subway. Oh, and by the way, if you intend on driving in Toronto, Ontario actually doesn't have a public auto insurance. Instead, it's public sector, meaning you're gonna have to shop around and find the best annual rates. The average cost of car insurance in Toronto is roughly $2,000 per year, or about $170 per month, which I agree with, as I am currently paying in around that price for my vehicle. But keep in mind, it really just depends by person and the area. Having a roof on top of your head and getting to places is nice, but what about groceries? How much is that in Toronto? Obviously, this one depends person to person, but from my own experience, I spend about $75 a week, making it to be in around $300 a month. According to the City of Toronto's Nutritious Food Basket Calculator, a single male between the ages of 19 and 30 now spends $340.23 a month on groceries, and a single woman between the same ages spends $264.48, giving us on average of $302.35. And also, looking at a side-by-side price comparison between Calgary and Toronto for standard grocery items, I would say they look fairly similar. The only thing that really jumped out to me from the screen was milk costing me an extra $1 in Toronto for a 1 liter. One important thing that I have to point out is that we're talking about groceries and not going out to eat at restaurants or bars, because that's what would really bump up your monthly expenses. Take it from me, as someone that loves to eat out in Toronto, it could really hurt your bank account.
Did somebody say cake?
Since we all now live in a digital modern era, let's now talk about internet and phone prices, as we're basically forced to now pay for these before we now enter this new metaverse world. According to one source I found online, suggests the average is $92.63 a month for internet and $80 a month for a cell phone, making the total $172.63. In other words, for easy memorization, we'll round it up to $175 for both internet and phone each month. I actually don't pay anywhere close to these average rates numbers. Right now, I pay $55 for my internet, $50 for my cell phone, and I was able to do this by choosing the subsidiary companies instead of choosing the main ones. So make sure you do this if you're ever planning to move to Toronto. And speaking of the main service carrier that people use for internet and phone out here, Toronto people typically would use between these three main ones, which are Bell, Rogers, and TELUS. The best method I find of relieving stress from the day is no other than going to the gym. And although I couldn't find the average price online, typically I would say it would cost anywhere between $40 and $60 on average. Now, the great thing about Toronto is that they have plenty cheaper alternative gyms that you can go to, and this time around I found a website that shares the 6 cheapest gyms in Toronto. For example, you have Planet Fitness that can go as low as $10 a month, Home Fitness, which is about $30 a month, Fit for Less, that's $10 a month on the first year, World Gym, that's $10, Crunch Fitness, $10, and the YMCA, which can range between $40 to $60 depending on your age. I go to the gyms fairly often in Toronto, and if anyone is curious to know which facility I would recommend or would be the most worth it, I would probably recommend the YMCA just because it includes the most amenities in terms of a swimming pool, a basketball court, squash, ping pong, and it all costs me $45 a month. Based off what I've seen so far, I feel a majority of Toronto people go to one of 3 gyms, which are the YMCA, Good Life, and LA Fitness, and they all cost around that price range of $40 to $60, what I mentioned earlier. Let us now bring everything together and see what on average is the cost of living alone in Toronto on a monthly basis, and for this I will need my notepad. Alright, this is interesting. For Toronto rent, we have $2,040 for a single bedroom that's likely based out downtown Toronto, $156 for transportation using our public transportation to TTC, $302.25 for monthly groceries, $172.63 for your internet and phone bill, and $50 for a gym membership, making your grand total to be $2,720.88. This amount is the monthly average cost of living alone in Toronto for basic standards of living that includes rent, transportation, groceries, internet and phone, and a gym membership. Another thing that I want to highlight is that I'm fully aware that this list isn't comprehensive in the sense that it doesn't include things such as hanging out with friends, entertainment costs, insurance, utility, but I want to give you a number as a good baseline for references. I know that you may be thinking that $2,700 a month is an enormous number, and quite honestly, I don't blame you. But also keep in mind that I know a lot of people in this city that are around my age group and that have found ways of cutting this number in half, if not more, and they did this by simply lowering their standards of living or living below their means. If you want more information on how to save money living in Toronto, I actually made a video in the past on how to cut down your cost of living out here. But anyhow, with that said guys, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching and following my millennial journey. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when I make a new video. And I guess I'll see you guys all in my next video. Peace.